Good evening. Welcome to this evening's Board of Education meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to share with the audience that if you are in need of Spanish translation services, we have Lupita here to assist.
Good evening, buenas noches. Si alguien necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor hágame saber y estoy disponible.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, we'd like to share a reminder regarding the process for public comments during board meetings. For each agendized action, discussion, or information-only item, the board will hear from staff, provide an opportunity for public comment, then hold board discussion and a vote if necessary. Public comment on non-agendized items will be heard during item 6, and public comment on closed session items will be heard during item 9 before adjourning into closed session. Please, public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are on the board's agenda or otherwise within the board's jurisdiction. To help us organize public comment using this system, if you wish to provide public comment, please complete a speaker card located at the entrance to the meeting room and provide it to our executive assistant to the superintendent, Michelle, back here. Speaker cards for public comment will be accepted prior to the calling for public comment portion of that agenda item. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. and would like to establish a quorum by roll call vote.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Here.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Here.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
And for the record, Board Member Matt Glazier is absent.
Thank you. May I receive a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
And to notify the audience that this open session will be audio taped, broadcast, and recorded on the district's YouTube channel. And Michelle, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Item 2, reports. These are routine status updates regarding campus activities, meeting schedules, conferences, and meetings attended, and recent developments from our student representative and our union presidents. Tonight, we will not have a report from our CSEA president, so we will start with our student representative, Cullen Pritchard.
Hello. So to start with Captain Cooper, the 4th and 5th graders have been going to the River School every Friday to work with the music teacher in preparation for the district-wide concerts. This has been a great way to work on their music school skills and to make new friends. Two Larcitos is having their family dance night this Friday, so this year is disco themed. This is a great opportunity for community building as well as a great excuse for everyone to show off their dance moves. The Carmel Middle School's Charlotte Biderwell won the school spelling bee and placed second at the county level. The Carmel Middle School also sent a team to San Mateo last Saturday for the Science Olympiad competition. 4 students were able to earn second place and 2 earned a third place finish. So thank you to Mr. Guzzi and congratulations to all the participants. The drama department of Carmel Middle will be presenting the annual spring musical Once Upon a Mattress from March 27th through the 29th. And as for Carmel High, the ASB team is preparing for the Battle of the Grades competition next week. There will be fun dress-up days as well as many lunchtime games to win points for your class. Thank you.
Thank you, Cullen. Next, we'll hear from our ACT president, Elizabeth Marsh.
There we go. Hi, good evening. So tonight you're going to be voting on our tentative agreement that we reached. It took a lot of creativity and patience on part of all 3 teams, district team, the classified team, and our certificated team. So I want to thank Juan Gomez, Elisa Ibsen, Gina Walcott, Dana Redding, Sarah Greco, and Michelle DiGirolamo for serving on our bargaining team. And then we are currently running our Association of Carmel Teachers elections. We have 10 offices that are up for nomination and election. And so I want to thank our elections committee, which is Kurt Grail, Natalie Kobza, and Lee Canberra. And that's it. Have a good night.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Agenda item 3, superintendent report. These are routine status updates regarding campus activities, meeting schedules, conferences, and meetings attended, and recent developments from our superintendent, Sharon Ofek.
All right, good evening, everyone. Our last meeting was just 2 short weeks ago. However, in that time frame, we've been keeping quite busy here in Carmel Unified. We hosted an ethnic studies information night with quite a good attendance rate and a good turnout. Our boys basketball team at CHS competed in the NorCal Championships. They put forth a valiant effort and made it really far, actually, for any team. So lots to be proud of there. Our elementary students attended Farm Day from all of our elementary schools, and they learned all about the different aspects of the ag industry. I attended along with Mr. Chavez, and it was very fun to see all the different aspects. And those herding dogs, man, they are high energy. That was a really amazing and impressive demonstration. And then our very own Jake Odello was presenting as well, which was super fun to see him do his everyday job and work with our students. It was fantastic. So grateful for the opportunity to be there and witness that firsthand. We held a study session with the board to share and solicit feedback on the draft strategic plan, which is currently in a feedback loop. And we launched the first of 3 music festivals in our district where our students shared their musical talents and really put forth a really amazing demonstration of the power of music and how it can impact our lives. It was really beautiful last night. If anyone was there, was the choral concert, and we have 2 more to go, band and orchestra, coming up for this month. March is National Music Month in our schools. So finally, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and recognize the entire CHS staff for their commitment and dedication and hard work in preparation for and during the WASC site visit. It's a large undertaking and has many elements to it. Takes an immense amount of time, effort, and collaboration to prepare the report and host a visiting team where you have people all over your campus and interviewing you and asking you questions. And although the final report is not yet available, we fully anticipate a very positive report with very high ratings based on the report out to the whole staff at the end of the visit from the site visiting team. So lots to be proud of in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you, Sharon. On to agenda item 4, consent calendar. The board may bundle a number of items and act upon them together in one motion through the use of a consent calendar. Consent agenda items are routine items deemed to be non-controversial for which board discussion is not anticipated and for which the superintendent recommends approval. There will be no discussions on these items prior to the vote unless any member of the board requests specific items to be removed for discussion. We did not receive any requests for public comments. And if nobody wants to pull any items, may I receive a motion to pass the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 5A, second interim budget report with Chief Business Official Yvonne Perez.
Good evening. Before I start my presentation, I just want to make a note that the board has copies of a revised SACS report for Fund 25 and Fund 24. Fund 25 and Fund 40. We realized that we inadvertently left off an audit adjustment on those 2 funds, and so that has been corrected. And so those corrected reports are before you, and we will ask that with the correction be approved tonight. Oops, this is not working. Might need to turn it on, yeah, that might help. I know that too. Okay. So tonight is the second interim report. This covers the period of actual expenses and revenues from July 1st to January 31st, and then we project revenues and expenses through June 30th of 2025. This is the budget calendar that you have seen before. So tonight is the second interim report. The next time that you'll hear from me is estimated actuals that go along with budget development for, or the budget draft that you will see on June 4th. And there's lots of things in between, lots of activity. This is the high-level overview of the budget. You can see there in column G, H, and I is the second interim report, and the other three columns are from the first interim report to give you a comparison of what changed. And so we have revenues projected of, a beginning fund balance of 24.3 million, revenues projected of 77.6 on the unrestricted general fund. And then we add our contributions for this year and next year. The board approved instructional materials block grant that we would offset costs from that grant, and it was $682,000. And then you see the different contributions and transfers to the other funds. And so that leaves on line 12 revenue sources available of 65.9 million. Bumped up against expenditures, that's 65.1 million, and so we have a net increase in our fund balance. It increased slightly from first interim to 845,806. And the second interim report does include the salary increases that you'll be asked to approve tonight. So we also have the transfer of funds to facility improvements of 2.7 million, and so we have a net decrease in fund balance of 1.8 million. And so then the ending fund balance decreases by that 1.8 million to 22.4 million. Okay. And then the unrestricted side, you can see that there, but I won't go into it. And then we also have the two unrestricted and restricted combined in the third column there. All right, here's our fund balance history. And so at estimated, you just saw that previously, so we're estimating 22.4 million. The board required reserves are 19.5 million, and so that leaves the difference of 2.9 there in that little box that's highlighted. And we assign that fund balance for activities that we're expecting. So textbooks, revolving cash is just a check account that we have in our office in case we need to write a check outside of the county runs. Half of the benefits, because the way that we run benefits in the district, half of it applies to the current year, and then the other half applies in July for the other half of the year. Reserve for cash of 2.4 million, and you've heard me talk about this before. We need to have some extra reserves in cash because we run so low in the month between November and December. Right, here's a history of the unrestricted general fund. You there on line 9 is really shrunk down, but we've got the beginning fund balance for each of the years. Revenue, you add in the revenue less your expenses. That will give you your net increase prior to the transfer to facilities. And this yellow line there on line 9 does tell an interesting story in that in prior years we have had higher fund balances and net increases to the general fund over the years. Last year was an offset of 2.8 million that we increased, but we know that was due to some timing of expenditures which were paid in the next fiscal year. So you can see from the previous slide that we're left with 845,000. So a decrease going on there of what our funds we're projecting to be available to sustain the district. But we're still in really, really good financial shape. We have a really good fund balance, and we're doing really quite well. All right, this is just a really high-level overview summary of what changed between second interim and first interim, and so we give the board some idea of what changed there. And I won't go through all of those lines, but you can see there that some revenue went up, and we also received some additional revenue for other things in the salary projections. We had some vacancy savings, and so that offsets there too. On the next slide is the same sort of information for the restricted general fund. And so once again, it gives the board some idea of what changed between the two reporting periods. Always we have to do a multi-year projection, and so using these multi-year projection assumptions drives what we project in the current year and 2 years out. So the state, of course, requires us to do a 3-year, multi-year projection. As always, the biggest cost to us is statutory benefits because we are a people district. It takes a lot of people to educate children. And so our statutory benefits are there towards the bottom in yellow. We know that the certificated is staying steady through the years, through the current year and the 2 years out. And because of PERS continuing to increase, there's a slight increase there going across. Here's some additional assumptions that we use in building the budget. One of the big things here is what are we projecting for revenue? Because we really do not know what our revenue will be until the fiscal year actually ends, when all of the property tax comes in, because that is the biggest source of our revenue. And so we do rely and have conversations with our assessor's office we're meeting with them next week, as a matter of fact, to have some conversation around, what are they seeing in terms of property values and other factors, economic factors and things like that. So those are listed there for your review. Here's the first interim, it says first interim, it should say second interim multi-year projection. And I always put in the prior fiscal year actuals as a comparison. I think that's a nice thing to look at. So there in the first few columns is the unrestricted accounts, and then starting on column O, P, and Q are the restricted accounts. And it's just a different presentation. It follows the SACS multi-year projection format, but it has the same information in terms of the current year that you saw in previous slides, and then our projection for the last 2 years, for the next 2 years. And so you can see that we look pretty good going forward with the revenue projections and expenses that we know that we're anticipating over the years. So it incorporates all of those assumptions that we have in there. So we are showing a deficit spending. Some of that, of course, is due to the transfer to facilities. In the next year out, we can see that we're increasing to 2.7 and then to 3.6 in the third year out. And then on the restricted side, mostly this is due to timing of revenue. The revenues come in at different times than we spend it. And so you see a lot of negatives in the restricted account, but that's okay as long as we have fund balance to support it, and we do. And then this is just a presentation of the unrestricted and restricted, the combined general fund. So what you can take away from this is that we are in good financial shape. Right, here's a slide of the revenue sources of the general fund. It's into the broad SACS required categories. Down at the bottom, I have the property tax projections. And what I'll note here is that you see the LCFF dollars there at the very top, and I know it's small, but it's 75 million. And of that 75 million, 72.9 million comes from local property tax. So that's 97.2 of our revenue. 97.2% of our revenue is from our local property tax. Much different than our state-funded districts. All right, uses of our unrestricted and general fund dollars in the broad SACS required categories. And so the biggest expense for our district is salaries and benefits. And we can see on the unrestricted general fund that it makes up 83.65% of our budget, and then the rest goes into other things like books and supplies, services, it's where we pay our utilities out of that account, capital outlay, and other outgo. And then at the very bottom, it's really super tiny, but I'm going to show it to you in a graphic form. We can see that salaries and benefits make up 80.93% of our general fund. And this is the same information in a graphical format, so it's really easy to see how much our salaries and benefits eat up our general fund, and that's why we have to be constantly cognizant of our staffing. All right, this is the table of transfers, contributions, and transfers from the unrestricted general dollars to other funds that aren't self-sustaining and other resources that are also not self-sustaining. So you can see there at the top, special ed, I have 23-24 actuals. We're projecting that that will go up by 853 million. We have had some, a lot of expenses in our special ed. Routine repair is required by the state, and so we're seeing that that is a total 3% function of total general fund expenditure, so that's increasing to 115,000. And then you can see that we have some decreases in our other funds compared to the prior year. And other post-employment benefits is our retiree benefits. I'll just make sure you understand that. And then down at the very bottom, I also included a transfer from Fund 14 that the board approved last board meeting from Fund 14 to Fund 40 just for accounting purposes. And so we can see that that total transfer to Fund 40 is 3.1 with 2.5 of it coming from the general fund. All right, this is where I will just point out the corrections that I talked about earlier when I started this presentation. So this is the other funds that we have in the district. In the Capital Facilities Fund, there is Fund 25. And the beginning fund balance should actually be 22,503 due to that audit adjustment that we inadvertently admitted. And so the ending fund balance is then 98,688. So that's a correction that is in those reports that you have in front of you. And then Fund 40, once again, that was also 109,000 was an audit adjustment, and so it changed the beginning fund balance to 3.37488, leaving a change in the fund balance of 3 million. All right, we have some fiscal impacts and challenges as we go to the next stage of our planning, which is estimated actuals and budget development. We've already started planning, had budget meetings with all of the schools, and now we're moving into budget meetings with each of the departments in the district. And so negotiations are ongoing. We have rising pension costs, as you saw. We have aging facilities and modernization work that needs to be done. And so we do not have enough funding to take care of all of those needs. And so as we've talked, it will be important for us to begin to consider a general obligation bond. Something that is a little nerve-wracking right now, because every day it seems like we're getting some sort of notice from our advisors about just economic uncertainties. It was just, I think it was yesterday or today, I read a report that they were cutting a program for nutrition services. And so that was disconcerting to see. And it was a program that provided fresh fruits and vegetables, basically farm to table, and that's being cut. Special education growth, we continue to see some programmatic needs in our special education students. And then universal TK, we know that we don't get any additional funding for that. Enrollment trends, we do have declining enrollment, so this requires us to strategically plan and our resources and how we're going to do that. We have to balance our student programs and with fiscal responsibility and find out what is most engaging for our students and plan all of our dollars to support those initiatives. And then we have technology infrastructure needs. It's always a huge expense for every school district, and there is a huge cost to it. And so the board several years ago approved a $200,000 ongoing transfer from the general fund to a reserve for technology. And we track that in a separate resource, and that will help us have funds available when we have really, really out of the ordinary costs for technology infrastructure. Finally, celebrations and growth opportunities. I realized as I was writing this up that our celebrations are also opportunities for continuous improvement. So we have many, many things, as you've heard me say in the past, of things to celebrate in our district. We are a really great district, and I feel very blessed to work for a district that is as special as ours. And with that concludes my presentation, and I want to just acknowledge Robin Voss and the Fiscal Services team with their names listed there. They work all the time to make sure that we can get to these points of reports to the board. And with that, I conclude, and we'll stand for questions.
Thank you. The board received no requests for public comments. And if the board has any questions or comments, we can start with Rita and work our way back this way.
Not too many questions, but I think for information for the public, I suppose, when they're at home looking at this presentation and they see transfers. And I would imagine maybe some folks in the community might think, why not allocate more funds to certain, I guess, parts of the budget so we can avoid doing so many transfers during the year? Would you be able to explain that a little bit of why we do it the way we do?
Right, so we have, I'll just jump back to that one slide. Yep, it's not, there we go. So right here, this is, you can see the transfers from the general fund. And I'll start with one that is, they're all pretty easy, but the post-employment there on fund, line 67. The district has retirement benefits for employees, and depending on when they were hired, their benefits kick in at different times. But if they take an early retirement and meet the requirements, and it can be as many as 10 years or even 12 years, the district continues to pay that half of the health benefits. And so this is where we track it. We track it in Fund 67. And there is a beginning fund balance in Fund 67 that we've continued to maintain. Some districts do an irrevocable trust. Our district is not doing that. We're doing a pay-as-you-go method. But we do keep a little, at least a 1 year, a 1 year amount in there in case we needed it. And so there are some reserves there, but that's to support our retirees in their health benefit, in their health benefits that they have. And then the special reserve for capital outlay, that is a transfer to facilities. That could be something that you could say that over the years, there's been enough fund balance that the decision was made over several years. We've been doing it for years and years, long before I was here, to maintain our facilities. And without a sustained bond program, your only other funding source for maintaining your facilities is through a transfer from the general fund. And it's just, when you're doing a large capital project, we have to transfer that from the general fund to an account where we track that. So that's the purpose of that. Deferred maintenance, the reason you're seeing a negative 400 in that deferred maintenance is because we actually have an ongoing transfer into deferred maintenance of 200,000, but this year we also transferred 600,000 out of it, so that's the net. And the state used to have a deferred maintenance program, and they would match dollars of what you used, what you put into that account for deferred maintenance. You had to meet some requirements. There were some regulations around it, but they would provide some match for that. And when they enacted the LCFF, they did away with deferred maintenance. And so the board, once again, a few years ago, decided that we would continue to put some additional dollars into deferred maintenance because our only other source for that is also the general fund. And we knew that there were some big cost items that were going to be coming up in the future. Once again, when you have an ongoing bond program, those kinds of things will be less needed. And then on child development, that's line 12 there, that's Fund 12, Child Development, you can see that there's a $1.1 million transfer. And that's made up of a couple of things, or three things really. So we provide a benefit to our employees of a 50% discount if they have a child in the district that is being, that is taking, using that program. And so if they're an employee in the district, their child gets a 50% discount for those services. And the other part that is coming out of that is ELOP. And so with the ELOP program, we had a little bit of funding last year left over that this year we'll make sure that we funded that instead of having it carry over. But any of the ELOP students that are in those really great programs that Laura Dunn runs, they get to have that program for free under the ELOP program. So that's part of that there. And then the rest of it is just the program not being self-sustaining. So there was a point in time where it was self-sustaining. It was pretty close, except for when you adjusted out for that 50% discount, it was a little bit closer than it is now. As salaries and benefits go up, cost of programs go up for that program, the costs have continued to increase over the years. So it's a pretty large transfer for sure. And then adult ed has also required a small transfer. This is used for a program for ESL, thank you. Yes, it's an adult program for adults, and we have an employee that's hired that provides those services. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, yeah. it helps
Rita, I have a
lot.
clarifying question. Was your question more to do with why we don't just have line items for these things instead of transferring out of the general fund, or just explanations of each of them?
No, more like, not
Why
line
didn't,
items.
yeah, her question's more is like, why don't we start with an adult education that has that instead of transferring it, I think was her question.
Can I try and take a crack at that? So just in a real, like, potentially overly simplistic manner, one thing that makes basic aid districts different than revenue limit districts, which are those who are funded through LCFF only, they know how much money they're getting. They get that amount of money every month. Basic aid districts get paid twice a year because we're funded solely on property tax, which, you know, we're fortunate. We're lucky. The cup gets filled and then some for us, which we're grateful for. And we try and allocate it based on the information that we have. But that amount of money, as you heard Yvonne say at the beginning of her presentation, is not a definitive number. And so all of our budgeting is determined on projections and our ability to track how much we are being communicated with through the county about how much we're going to get and where we need to allocate those resources. So holistically, when we approve a budget, every district who's a basic aid district, of which there are 150 or so in the state, we all approve our budgets based on historical data and information and projections. And as first interim comes and then second interim comes and then actuals, it gets more and more refined based on real information.
Yeah.
But up front, as you heard Yvonne say, we don't even hear from the county how concretely how much we have. It's all a projection. So you can refute what I'm saying, but that to me is like the most basic, very high level explanation for the difference between how a revenue limit district and a basic aid district, community funded district have to do their budgeting. So it's not, it's projection based.
It's projection based. So would you take this year's projection, and if you add a certain amount of money from the fund, would you increase it for next year?
So the way that it works, these are really cost centers. If I put it in very simple terms, it's like its own bank account. And so at the Monterey County Treasurer's Office, they actually track these in these funds in their own separate bank account. And so when we're doing, and so we want to track the program of which each of those funds represent, and it's a state required funding mechanism. And so if you think about it like that, so we project what are all the expenses that are going to be needed for these different funds.
Yeah.
And now we know that, and we know we project the revenue, we have the expenses, and there's not enough. So then it requires a transfer to make it whole.
Yeah.
Does that help?
That helps, but let's just say cafeteria costs like 300,000 this year.
So the
Would you-
cafeteria fund actually is self-sustaining, and it has been for the past 3 years. It really helped when they went to free meals for all. That actually improved, and so many kids are participating. It actually improved our numbers. But the cafeteria fund, often the cafeteria fund is not self-sustaining.
Yeah.
And then
And
it
it wasn't
requires
for
a
many years
transfer.
here,
Yeah,
and
it
then-
was not.
yeah.
That's correct.
So now it is. So,
Yeah.
okay, I get it. It was just
You
try-
can't
kind of a
predict all
general-
of that
yeah, you
so
can't predict it.
precisely. And I'll also say, you heard quite a bit about facilities, and Yvonne's going to give you like really, I mean, this is her everyday
Yeah.
job, and she knows all the funds and can like go for another hour on it. But
Yeah.
but that, and we don't want that. But I don't think anyone does, at least. But like you heard a lot about facilities and maintaining our buildings and whatnot. Those costs increase constantly. And in fact, I got a notice today, like warning us, like, hey, tariffs are kicking in. We expect a 10 to 15% jump in raw materials. Be prepared, right? Like we get that stuff
Yeah.
all the time. So obviously, whatever we projected in June is not necessarily going to pan out for us, and we'll have to do transfers. So that's just one example that's, not concrete, but a
Okay.
very generic response to like, why do we have to do them sometimes?
Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question based on the transfers. So I'm sensing that there's like some, I didn't view it like this, but potentially some negative optics to having these transfers. I always looked at it, Yvonne, from your study sessions and all of your presentations, that these numbers really are based on projections for all the reasons that you and Sharon described. And then they are based on projections, interim 1, interim 2, and then the final budget, right?
Right.
So is it viewed negatively, or what are the optics? I mean, is the having transfers because it's based on projections? Is that sort of standard operating process for basic aid districts? Because I feel like that angle of the question needs to be answered, because I just want to make sure that it's clear, what the optics of these transfers are.
Yeah, so we do, when we prepare the operating budget, the July 1 budget every year, we're projecting those transfers already. They just be, as Sharon mentioned, it becomes more and more clear as the year goes on. We're able to project closer and closer as months go by. But it is planned. It is planned in the operating budget. Those transfers are there on the July 1 budget with some projection. And so based on the expenses we're expecting, how the state requires us to track those, this is not Yvonne making this up. It's all, there's a California state accounting manual that is, I'm not kidding you, this big or bigger. And now you don't download it anymore, it's all online. But it's very regulated, and that's also why we also get audited to make sure that we're following all of those regulations. And how we account for those are very regulated.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, my question wasn't to be, it wasn't to be negative. I understand the
Right.
budget. I've been here quite some time, but I'm just trying to think of questions that maybe the members of the public might have. Not in a negative way, but if they're looking at this and they're saying, oh, there's a lot of transfers, why don't they just allocate more money in a certain fund so they don't have to
Okay.
do that? And that's the reason for my question there.
No, I thought it was a great question. I didn't take it as a
Okay.
negative
Thank you.
question whatsoever.
And then I guess just a comment, I think on page 9, I'm happy to see the district, because I think as you mentioned, our enrollment is going down, and the district is, gosh, what page was that on? 9, right?
Was it a slide or on the report?
I think, yeah, there it is, slide 9. Okay, because I
Okay.
know in the past you've had the graph of the in the past you've had a graph of I guess the enrollment versus full-time employment, the FTEs. So
Yes,
that that graph is still, I guess, up to date with your projections from today's interim.
Yes.
Okay.
And when we had the budget study,
Yeah.
that information was
Mhm.
there. I
Yeah.
didn't include it in this report,
Yeah.
but yes.
Okay. That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I know a lot of work goes into this. I appreciate you and your entire staff.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, Yvonne. Thank you so much for the detailed presentation, and thank you for the time that your team put into it. And again, as I mentioned to you every time we do these presentations, I do appreciate you reminding the public how much of our general fund is eaten up by salary and benefits. I think that pie chart is extremely helpful and informational for the public to see, because I do still think that there is a little bit of the feeling out there that, we're overflowing with cash. And although you said we're stable and we're in a great place, a lot of our budget is eaten up by salary and benefits. So thank you again for calling that out. So
Thank you.
thanks for the great presentation as usual.
I have one question. You mentioned that we are not on an ongoing bond, or we're not on a ongoing bond program.
Mhm.
Can you just explain what that is a little bit?
Yeah, you're going to test me here, but it's been.
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's-
I'm sorry.
No, it's
We-
okay. It's a great question. I'm not sure when the last time the district sold a bond, but I think it's been about 20 years.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long
Very
time. And so.
And that's a financer, yeah. But keep going.
Yeah, and so many districts have a program where they go out for a bond more often, and we have not done that. And so we're now in the situation where our rate is really low. I don't want to go into too much detail, but you can kind of steady rates if you have an ongoing bond program. And so that's something for the board to consider as we move forward. We have great needs, just great needs. Is if you have some time to look at the facility master plan, it's a big read, but all the information is there. And it really is going to require not a whole lot of update. What we need to update in the facilities master plan are the cost projections, because it was completed almost 6 years ago, but it also provides a great tool for us to plan for the future. So that we do have to do some adjustments in there, and there's some other things that may have come up. Priorities might have changed in that time of what was prioritized in the original facility master plan, but we don't need to start over. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. I don't have any questions. Cullen, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I did have one question. So, in the instance where you transfer funds to a different department or a different area, once those funds are transferred, does all that money that is moved need to be spent in that area? Or if there's a surplus in that, can that be reallocated back to the... That's, I don't know.
Right. No,
I worded that poorly, but...
it's a
I think
great
you understand.
question. Yeah,
Okay.
really good question. So, for example, that Fund 67 where I said
Yeah.
retiree benefit fund,
Yeah.
there is some surplus in there, but we're keeping a year's worth of what we believe would be activity. But if we were in really dire straits, we could move it. It could go back because the source of it is the general fund.
Oh, okay.
Now, some of your restricted accounts, those are contributions. It's kind of the same concept, just a different word, because it's in the same bank account, same fund. They call it a contribution rather than a transfer. So those are, you really can't move those around. They're very restricted on what you do. And we do balance those with the contribution when it's necessary. So it's the same concept.
Okay.
And so there are some places where you can do that. Fund 40, for example, is another fund that we can do that with. But those right now, what's in Fund 40 is all, we're in progress on construction projects that uses up all of those dollars. So
Great.
they're committed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Yvonne. If there's no other questions or comments, may I receive a motion to approve the second interim budget report?
I move to approve the second interim budget report with a positive certification as presented.
I'll second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Next up, agenda item 5B, tentative agreement between the Associated Carmel Teachers and the Carmel Unified School District and the Associated AB 1200 public disclosure documents and salary schedules with Chief Human Resource Officer Craig Chavez.
So I'll be up here with you for the next few items. They are slightly different, so I'm going to go through the nuances of those because there are components that are the same. So this tentative agreement between the association and the district is reflected in regards to Article 2, salary and wages. The main portions of this are salary and wages to be increased for all bargaining unit salary schedules by 3% for 2024-25, retroactive back to July 1 of 24. One item for the 25-26 school year, and that is the salary schedule for the child development teachers will increase by $1.50 per cell. And then finally, that this closes this particular article, an item for conversation, which is one of the bonuses of actually getting to an agreement. You don't talk about that area anymore. So we won't be having a conversation related to this for 24-25, but it will leave it open in future years. So this agreement is here for your approval, and the financial impact there is listed as $1,014,000 and $14,061 for the ACT bargaining unit.
The board received no questions or comments from the public, and we can start with board discussion or questions, starting with Rita, working our way back.
No questions. Thank you so much on both parties for the negotiations and getting to this where we're at today. Thank you.
No questions either. Thanks for all the hard work for all the parties involved.
I have no questions, but I really like that sweater you're wearing, so when finds its way to me, it wouldn't be bad.
Thank you, Craig. I also have no questions. Cullen, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not. Thank you.
May I receive a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the tentative agreement between ACT and CUSD and the associated AB 1200 public disclosure documents and salary schedules as presented.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello,
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines,
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Agenda item 5C, tentative agreement between the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 190 and the Carmel Unified School District and associated AB 1200 public disclosure documents and salary schedules with Chief Human Resource Officer Craig Chavez.
So similarly, for our classified employees within the CSEA unit, this is a salary increase of 3% to all of the affiliated salary schedules for CSEA. And there is a second item in which we reached an agreement, and that is on the duration. So we are in successor agreements or negotiations. So each 3 years or whenever it ends, the last one ends, we have to set a duration for the next kind of cycle. And in this case, there's an interest in both parties of setting a cycle of 3 years again for the collective bargaining agreement. So the duration is set from July 1, 2024 to June 30 of 2027. And it does also establish how many reopeners. So 2 items are always open every year unless you agree to close them. Salary and wages and health and welfare benefits are always open. We are closing those for 24-25. So the first year of this agreement is now closed with this. And then 3 additional articles can be opened by either party. So those are as items come up. If it's needed, it is not required to open all 3.
Thank you, Craig. The board received no requests for public comment, so we'll open up to the board, starting with Rita.
Again, no questions. Thank you, both parties. Thank you.
None for me.
None. The jacket's still nice.
Thank you, Craig. Cullen, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
May I receive a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the tentative agreement between CSCA and its Chapter 190 and CUSD and the associated AB 1200 public disclosure documents and salary schedules as presented.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi,
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello,
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines,
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 5D, salary increase for non-represented employees for the 2024-25 and salary schedules with Chief Human Resource Officer Craig Chavez.
So this final one is for all other employees that don't fall under the ACT or CSEA bargaining units. One thing I would say is that the district has a long history of recognizing all of its employees in the same way or in similar ways, and this is one of those representations. So this is an increase to the salary schedule of 3% for all unrepresented or non-represented employees in the associated salary schedules, and the same context in terms of who it applies to and how it will apply.
The board received no requests for public comments. I'll open it up for board discussion, starting with Rita.
No questions. Thank you.
No questions either, but thank you, Craig, for calling out that even though this is for non-represented, that our district does have a long history of treating all of our employees and recognizing them in the same way. So thank you for calling that out, because this group is no different than the others in terms of all the things. That's, you know what I meant.
I absolutely do.
So thank you.
No questions.
Thank you, Craig. Cullen, do you have any questions or comments? May I receive a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the salary increases for non-represented employees for 24-25 and the associated salary schedules as presented.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi,
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello,
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines,
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 5E, California School Boards Association 2025 Delegate Assembly Election with Superintendent Sharon Ofek.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We are members of the California School Boards Association, and they have a delegate assembly, and we have a representative from our region that attends meetings on our behalf and comes back to Monterey County and shares information, et cetera. So this is a pretty routine item every year. We haven't done it for a couple of years, but we're bringing it back. There's only one candidate who's interested in continuing in this role. He's the current person, and he is continuing interest, so he is the delegate that is up for nomination. information and his application with all the reasons why he wants to serve in this capacity on behalf of our region is attached to the board item. And I guess one thing I'll just say is that it's very student-centered. His explanations and rationales for his, why he's interested in serving in this role and all of his activities are all connected straight back to interest in increased student achievement and supporting students and supporting school districts in having a student-focused lens. So it's here for your interest to say whether or not you want to support his nomination or not.
The board received no requests for public comments, and I'll open it up for board discussion, starting with Rita.
In the past, I was our delegate for 9B. I guess being new on the board, again, I wasn't aware there was an opening. Otherwise, I would have thrown my name in the hat again. But I know David, and I'm really thrilled that he's thrown his name in, continuing.
I read the application just like everybody else did, attached to the board agenda item. Thank you for the descriptor, Sharon, and if he would like to do it again, and it sounds like he has all the right qualifications and he's student-centered and sounds like he was a board member for 6 years, which is helpful, all the things. So happy to move forward with him again as the delegate.
I have no comment.
How long is his term for, Sharon?
I think it's a 2-year term.
Rita just said 2 years,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I think we should support him in his run for it and move forward with that.
And for anyone who is listening or watching this tomorrow, this person is from the Greenfield School District, Greenfield Union School District. So in case people are interested in knowing.
Would somebody like to make a motion to support David?
I move to approve
As presented?
as presented.
Thank you. I'll second.
Board President Jason Remenzi,
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello,
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines,
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Agenda item 6, public comment. We did not receive a request for public comment, but I'll read the script anyhow. Public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the public may address the board regarding items or topics within the board's jurisdictions that are not on the agenda at this time, and we have nobody. And we can move past that. Next, informal report from superintendent, item 7, with Sharon Ofek.
I don't really have anything informal to report, but I will say thanks to everybody who was here in person in this rainy day, and appreciate everyone who's here to contribute to our meeting.
Thank you, Sharon. Board committee reports. I'm not sure if we'll have reports, but we'll check in with everybody. It was a really short turnaround between our last meeting and this meeting. So item 8, board committee reports. These are routine committee updates from CUSD Board of Education, board representatives for Community Human Services, Mission Trails, Regional Occupational Executive Board, and Monterey County School Boards Association. Monterey County School Boards Association Representative Matt Glazier is not here today, so we won't hear from him. But we'll start with Rita about Community Human Services.
I have no update on community human services.
Thank you.
We have a meeting
Yeah.
next week.
A quick turnaround. I didn't expect anything. Jake, did you have any meetings since then? I think you covered it last meeting also.
Correct. I did not have any meetings. The next meeting for the JPAs tomorrow
Perfect.
in Gonzales.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, closed session. Before adjourning to closed session, the board will identify the closed session items and provide an opportunity for public comment on these items. Item 9A, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, subsection D2, one case. Item 9B, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, property at 27885 Robinson Canyon Road, Carmel Valley, County of Monterey, APN number 169-131-005, agency negotiator Yvonne Perez, chief business official Jessica K. Johnson of Dennis Wolliver Kelly. Our negotiating parties are Carmel Unified School District under negotiation price terms of payment. Item 9C, public employee discipline, dismissal, release pursuant to Government Code 54957, subdivision B1. The board did not receive any requests for public comment. And we will adjourn into closed session at 6:24 p.m. Coming out of closed session, the board reports the following. For item 9A, the board met with district staff and legal counsel and provided direction. For item 9B, the board met with district staff and legal counsel and provided direction regarding further due diligence. For item 9C, no action was taken. I adjourn this meeting at 7:28 p.m.